Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 We continue reading from the fourth canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 1, entitled Genealogical Table of the Daughters of Manu. We are at text 58 and read also 59. Yes. Evam Suraganais Tata Bhagavanta Abhishtutao Labtavalokaya Yayatur Architao Gandhamadanam Evam Suraganaistata Bhagavanta Bhavishtuta Labdhavalokaya Yayatur Architao Gandhamadanam Evam Suraganaistata Bhagavanta Bhavishtuta Labdhavalokaya Yayatur Architao Gandhamadanam
Evam Suraganaistata Bhagavanta Abhistuto Labdhavalokaya Yayatur Architao Gandhamadanam
Evam Suraganaistata Bhagavanta
Bhavishtuto
Labdhavalokaya Yayatur Architao
Gandhamadanam Evam Suraganaistata Bhagavanta Bhavishtuta Labdhavalokaya Yayatur Architao Gandhamadanam Evam thus Suraganai by the demigods Tata Ovidura Bhagavanta the Supreme Personality of Godhead Abhishtuta having been praised Labdha having obtained Avalokai the glance of mercy Yayatur departed Archito having been worshipped Gandhamadanam to the Gandhamadana hill. Translation. Maitreya Muni said, O Vidura, thus the demigods worshipped with prayers the Supreme Personality of Godhead, appearing as the sage Nada Narayana. The Lord glanced upon them with mercy and then departed for Gandhamadana hill. In text 59. Tapimau vai bhagavato hare amshav ihagato bharavyaya ja bhuva krishna yarukurudvaho. That Narayana Rishi, who is a partial expansion of Krishna, has now appeared in the dynasties of Yadu and Kuru, in the forms of Krishna and Arjuna respectively, to mitigate the burden of the world. Purport. Narayana is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and Nara is a part of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana. Thus the energy and the energetic together are the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Maitreya informed Vidura that Nara, the portion of Narayana, had appeared in the family of the Kurus, and that Narayana, the plenary expansion of Krishna, had come as Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, with the purpose of delivering suffering humanity from the pangs of material burdens. In other words, Narayana Rishi was now present in the world in the forms of Krishna and Arjuna. Om Ajnanatimidandasya Gnanjana Shalakaya Chakshuram Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapidam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Dadati Svaparantikam Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Bhagishayasya Vadane Lakshmiryasya Chabakshasi Yasya Dheriya Sambit Tam Narasimham Maham Bhaje Pralada Rirayanadam Bhaktavitya Vidaram Sharatindurajam Vande Parindra Vandanam Harim. Maitreya said, O Vidura, thus the demigods worshipped with prayers the Supreme Personality of Godhead, appearing as the sage Narayana. The Lord glanced upon them with mercy and then departed for Gandhamadana hill. So the last few verses of this chapter addressed already the forms of Narayana Rishi, and I assume you might have heard kata of these particular forms the last days, whoever was present. No? No?
We didn't go too much into it because, it's now more described who they are.
Because we find in the 11th canto, in the 4th chapter, there's mention of there's a pastime of Narayana Rishi. The chapter isn't entitled that I don't recall the exact chapter name, but it is someone describing different forms of Godhead, and Narayana Rishi is described there. It's a pastime. And it is one pastime that seems to happen occasionally in a kind of same context, because usually personalities like here demigods have been praying to Narayana Rishi. The demigods tend to be envious on sages because they are afraid if sages become very powerful by renunciation, they might compete with their position in the heavenly planets. Because one of the motivations why people take up severe austerities and penances is to gain a higher level of material existence in heavenly planets. That might be a position of power like those of Indra. And we heard interestingly also some verses before that the form called Yajna Vishnu took even the position of Indra, but out of the reason that there was no Jiva available that could fit in the post of Indra at that time. So but Indra has tendency to be very afraid, anxious and envious. So we can also here see that even in the higher planetary systems there is suffering, at least in the form of anxiety, that you lose the status of existence you have. Your body might not be in any way vulnerable to stuff like a coronavirus or something, virus, but there are other anxieties, like that you might lose this position. This is one of the great struggles of each conditioned soul, to lose what has been gained, so difficult perhaps by austerities, or like what is cherished, has been cherished for so long as one's own. And Narayana Rishi, they were sages and they performed quite some intense austerities in their ashram called Badarika Ashram. Right. And it's even said they still reside there today. So many pilgrims used to go to this place. Of course, they don't just stay there as we can see them, of course, in their transcendental forms, but if a person is purified enough and sincere enough, they might reveal themselves to the sincere pilgrim who takes up the quite austere path to go up there, because it's quite, so far as I'm aware, it's quite a challenge to go up to this particular region in the Himalayas to reach that ashram. So what Indra did when he saw that they performed this strong austerity, he of course does what he usually do. He sends Cupid along with Spring, along with the Apsaras, beautiful heavenly girls, dancers and singers, in order to seduce the sage or whatever person is there, so that they fall down from their position, so there's no more threat, so to speak, to him. So what happened is the Cupid came, and like Spring was there, manifesting his fragrance, his beautiful atmosphere, and the Apsaras were singing, and Cupid was shooting his arrows. And Cupid often is in the unthankful position to get actually punished for Indra's envy, because with Shiva it happened that, or like was it even Markandeya Rishi? Maybe even both. He got burned completely. his body got being destroyed by the anger of the sages, where he couldn't apply his what the English word for Zauber, for his spell. His spell didn't work on. So once Cupid lost his body completely, there's a whole story in the Krishna book also. Yeah, but here Narayan Rishi, they reacted differently, particularly Narayana, to the incident. He saw them and noticed they tried to seduce him, and he was smiling and was rather amused, because he could see, oh yeah, he knew Indra is again envious and tries something here. And of course, like any powerful person gets in a way dejected or at least astonished when his or her power doesn't work on someone. If you're used to be very influential or maybe dominant or like smart and maybe charming, and then someone doesn't respond to it at all, and you feel like, oh, what's happening? Usually I get my way with this. So they felt like it didn't work on them, and so they were already shocked, and then noticed they're very powerful sages, and we probably commit quite some offense here, and they were afraid to receive a heavy curse. So they trembled in front of Narayan Rishi. But he was reassuring, smiling and laughing with them, and rather making a gesture that was unexpected. He rather offered them some charity. And he said, please take these gifts from me. Because we welcomed them as guests in his ashram, and they offered prayers. And he showed them that he had nothing to get from them. Because usually what Indra assumed was, the sages, they're also usual enjoyers as I am, so let's offer them something that could seduce them. But there's nothing Krishna can want from the conditioned soul, which he anyway does not have already in a way higher degree or extent. So if the demigods come and offer the most beautiful girls, Narayan just laughed at them, thinking, well, let me show you something. And then out of his own body, he manifested the most beautiful Vaikuntha girls or Apsaras like no one has seen in this world. They were uncomparable to any of what was been seen in the material world of goddesses and so on. And demigods were really astonished by the beauty of these girls. And then Narayan offered them, please pick one of them and install them, so to say, as the ornament of the heavenly planets. You know. And then the demigods, syllable Om has been chanted, it's described, and then they selected Urvashi, which the name rings a bell, I guess, because this is then one of his heavenly girls also. Interestingly, tries to apply in his services to get other sages to fall down. And then so they took her, put in front of her, and respectfully departed to the heavenly planets. You know, so going without, even not without punishment, even with a blessing at the end. So this shows the sublime character of Narayan Rishi, that they were, first of all, very renounced, no interest in any enjoyment. Even his own energy, his own Shakti cannot necessarily, how to say, seduce the Lord. And also that he's non-envious. It's also one of the features of Krishna, that he has nothing that he envies the living entities for. Like Indra thinking, oh, this person wants my position, but it was Krishna. He gave the position to Indra in the first place. So why would he be envious on something he gave, which is just a fraction of his own potency? So, and he's also very kind, forgiving, obviously, because even these demigods behaved foolish and envious. He didn't mind at all, he just tolerated them and rather showed them what is the behavior of a sage. It's also in the purport is mentioned, the saintly character was manifested by Narayan Rishi. In this regard, that he showed compassion and being not at all agitated by the offense the demigods committed. So this is some of the glories of Narayan Rishi, which is described in the 11th canto. And then here it's described how the demigods worship and praise the Supreme Personality of God appearing as the sage Narayan. The Lord glanced upon them with mercy and then departed to Gandhamadana hill. And then further is described these two, Narayan Rishi, who's a partial expansion of Krishna, has now appeared in the dynasties of Yadu and Kuru, in the form of Krishna and Arjuna respectively, to mitigate the burden of the world. So you see also one of the mission statements that Krishna is also presenting in the Bhagavad Gita. He says, Yadari dharmasya gani pravadiparada apyutanam adharmasya tadatmanam strajamyaham paritvanaya sarvanam vinashya chaduskritam dharma samstapanataya sambhavam yuge yuge. It is necessary to appear regularly in different ages, because the nature of the world is that things deteriorate, and religion or dharma is no exception to that. So it's natural that things being influenced, like being changed, being manipulated, getting lost. So there's always reason for Krishna to appear again, to give it anew, in a different context perhaps also, for the time, the circumstances, establishing what is dharma. And at the same time, Paritvanaya Sadhanam, protecting those who are pious or devotees, pleasing them by showing pastimes, by showing his forms, and also by Vinashana Chaduskritam, to destroy the miscreants or the demons that give disturbance to the devotees. And also one of the devotees is Bhumi Devi. Bhumi Devi is a great devotee of Vishnu, one of his servants, like any other demigods. And we also can sometimes see, like, there are prayers of her, also in the first canto of Bhagavatam, where she's complaining about how she's struggling from the burdens of demonic kings. So he said Krishna and Arjuna like are Narayan Rishi, or like Narayana appeared as Krishna. This may be misleading, because actually Narayana is an expansion of Krishna. So the original Krishna appeared with his part, the Narayan Rishi, and then Arjuna is considered the expansion. And Srila Prabhupada writes something interesting here. Narayana is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and Nara is a part of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana. Thus, the energy and the energetic together are the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So he makes a statement of completeness, that these two, this energy is not separate, but together they are representing the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the energy and the energetic. So like a rich man would be with his wealth. They make these things together, make the rich man. But not that he's the rich man, also his riches, they are there. So Krishna and his energies together make the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the way he mitigated the burden of the earth was in various ways. In single incidents, Krishna and Arjuna, like we can hear, they fought so many demonic kings in due course of the presence. And it, climaxed at a point of the battle of Kurukshetra. That was actually the ultimate goal of Krishna's arrangements, that all these demonic kings also gather together on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, and then all of them could be destroyed. That was also one of the reasons why it was necessary that this fight happened, so that the weeds could be pulled, and significance is given to the name Dharma Kshetra, like the field where religious principles are rather nurtured or like supported, and irreligious principles are being stripped of their powers. So the place was significant to say, here now our Dharma is being destroyed, and new Dharma can rise by slaying, so to say, demonic kings, which is equal to pulling the weeds out of the garden of the world. So, and some kings had been already before defeated in different pastimes. You might remember King Jarasandha, who was very determined to defeat Krishna, and he did it, sometimes I forget the number, 18 times, says it. And he lost all the time, so he was very determined. Imagine you start a fight with someone and you lose once. Okay, you might start again because it might have been bad fortune for you, and then you do the second time, you lose. And then you might think, okay, maybe this is someone I cannot defeat. And you might give it a third try, to defeat that person. But 18 times, that shows either complete unawareness of of your position in regards to your opponent, or simply you're stubborn, or I don't know, whatever drives this person to pursue it over and over again. But obviously, he didn't grow tired of trying to defeat Krishna. And also interesting is, like, when you look at the numbers, how many armies he managed to gather in that time. I mean, where did all these people come from? 18 times with a huge army of hundreds, thousands of people and elephants, and Krishna all the time defeated it. And there's all, in the Krishna book we can hear descriptions. It's in a poetic way described how actually the battlefield was compared to an ocean, but the ocean was not made of water. Of course, it was an ocean of blood, and in there, what would be fish and other ornaments of the ocean would be the heads of soldiers with helmets of gold and arms and weapons which were swimming there. So this was the scenery, and Krishna all the time defeated him. And even this is one of the qualities mentioned in also, I think in the Bhakti or something, that Krishna is really an expert military leader, or strategic, what do we say in English? Stratege is a strategist, perhaps? Whatever, someone who's very expert in strategy. And he managed that none of his own soldiers were killed. So, in a way, saying actually he didn't need any soldiers because he could protect all of them. So he fought with Jarasandha so many times. But once he gave him the pleasure to get the feeling, now I got Krishna. Because Krishna, what he did, he turned away, he showed his back and ran off the 19th time. And he ran to this one cave. Of course, we know it's a pastime. He wanted Muchukunda to use his curse, his blessing, to kill Jarasandha. No, is it Jarasandha? No. Am I mixing something up now?
Jarasandha was terrible.
Yeah, isn't it? Jarasandha was terrible part. Muchukunda was someone else then with... I'll mix the names, I'm sorry. However, one king was certainly trying so many times to defeat Krishna and never managed. And with Jarasandha, it's actually the name. Yeah, the name indicates someone who was put together from two pieces. There was one witch in the forest who found him in two pieces, which also is an interesting story, that the king, like the father, discarded the body. I don't recall exactly the reason why. It was in two halves. But the witch Chara found him and put him together, and then he was Jarasandha put together. And this was the only weak spot, actually, this middle. And then actually they went there with Bhima at one point, and they knew Jarasandha, although a very demoniac king, interestingly had the habit to respect Brahmins. And so he was always given charity, and they knew that, and they wanted to take advantage. And they went there like dressed as Brahmins, though like they become obvious, because the Kshatriyas is said on their arms, there are also scars, particularly if they are fight with bow and arrow, because the string might hit there, although they use protection, but still. This is also what was noticeable in some of the Kshatriyas' arms and their stature and everything. So, but they still dressed as Brahmins to go there, and Jarasandha received them. And then pretty soon they revealed their real intention. And then it was some word fight at first, like they were experts to challenge each other on a psychological level. And then Bhima was selected to fight with Jarasandha, and actually often Bhima is picked out by the kings as the only worthy opponent, because they're very proud and think, yeah, this is the only one who could really match my skill, my strength. So they fought for days and days and days. I think we also went in like 30 days, or like at least almost practically a month, and they were fighting, and they were practically equal. It was interesting that Bhima could not defeat Jarasandha in mace fighting or whatever weapons. Then Krishna, this is something what Krishna does, where he is being looked at as being partial, because then he gave a hint to Bhima. I think he was pulling a grass into pieces, not like practically giving the message, he's in the middle, put him apart. And then he made a move where he could get him to the ground, and they said he stepped on one foot and took the other leg and just ripped him open like this. And Jarasandha was defeated in this battle. Sorry, I'm getting again into it. But yeah, that's Krishna's mission. He said, like, I mitigate the burden of the earth. So he does it either himself or by his devotees, or like let the kings defeat each other. You know, bring them together on the battlefield of Kurukshetra so that they fight each other. And it's said ultimately anyway, any demoniac person means a person who's very sinful, not respecting the Supreme Personality of Godhead and its creation, destroys itself by its own karma. So that ultimately Krishna sometimes just uses also the karmic reactions to balance, so to say, the burden of the earth. And we understand that there is karma, collective karma, and also now what's happening at the moment, though it's the tragedy and so many suffering is there, but the reason why it's there, there's karmic, sorry, my English today is sometimes lacking a bit. There's justification coming for that. Might be not this virus or that virus that comes, you know. But the thing is, there had been viruses before, pandemics before, and they are also provoked by how human beings treat the creation. So, of course, everyone has to find solutions in the moment when it comes, but the ultimate solution is to go to the root, to correlate, and to pull out the weed, so to say, at its root. You know, not just cut off what is visible as a plant. You know. And the root is the misunderstanding of that there's no owner to this world and we can do with it what we like. So Krishna is coming here, it said, to make clear again what is the religious principle, what is the position of Krishna, and to remind that there is a particular, book of rules or laws, how one should deal with the creation. So in order that people can also live peacefully here and cultivate their Krishna consciousness. Yeah, so we heard a bit of Narayan Rishi, the glories, and a bit of Krishna and Arjuna. So we could continue, but so far, if there are any questions or comments on that, was that so far?
Should we take the microphone? it is mentioned that Nara is the energy of the Lord, right? And later they come as Arjuna and Krishna, so actually Arjuna is an energy of the Lord. How is this to understand? Is it, I mean, Radharani we hear is the inner energy of the Lord. So is there somewhere a description like what kind of energy Arjuna or Nara is? Or is it just?
It's that the Jiva Shakti is also described. The Jivas are an energy. And as Radharani is particularly Antaranga Shakti, the inner energy of the Lord. And it's also often said when it's about the deity worship and the way mantras are used, or how we look at it, it's called Shakti Tattva. She is an energy of Krishna, of a different status than the Jivas. The Jivas are what's the Shakti called? Yeah, anyway, but still sometimes we say in English the marginal energy, the energy that is in between Tatashta, exactly, Tatashta Shakti, that's the Sanskrit term for that. And so Arjuna being also a living entity like that, but particular, sometimes invested with powers by Vishnu, like any Tatashta Jiva can become an empowered living entity, where Vishnu invests some of his potencies, and according to that, this Jiva might also count as Vishnu Tattva. That's the case like with King Prithu, for example. He's handled as a Shakti Veshavata, and sometimes partial expansion of Vishnu, which is not a contradiction, because if Vishnu's power is present to a bigger degree, then it's Vishnu also, because he's not different from his energies. So, but basically, on the core, he's also Tatashta Shakti, living entity. Are there any other comments, questions?
So you just told that Krishna cannot be envy, right? Envious. And there are a lot of bad qualities or mindsets, and it is said that only envy cannot be used in the service of Krishna. Can you please explain what is the exact reason why you cannot use envy in Krishna's service, but other seemingly negative qualities or emotions for Krishna's service?
Yeah. Because envy is completely contrary to service. Envy is that what is the roadblock that you can serve. Because when a person is truly envious, the feeling or the mentality is, I don't grant you anything. Actually, it's a strong spirit of taking. Envious, if a person is very envious, he's really in the mode of taking, not in the mode of sharing or giving or serving. Like, let's look at Duryodhana. Duryodhana was extremely self-serving and being extremely envious. And when it was about giving the rightful share to the Pandavas, for example, they asked, okay, we are Kshatriyas, please respect Dharma. Dharma means we got to rule, at least something, give us a village at least. We are satisfied with the village, which is very humble for Kshatriyas of that caliber. So, and he said, no, you do not get even that as much as fits on the head of a needle. Making clear, I don't give you anything. So that there's even not even a basis for service. If one is completely envious, you actually, you're not willing to give anything. And so envy and service of Krishna, this is an oxymoron. Serve Krishna and envy. What with envy? Yeah. Whereas,
like, envy is defined as a request, or as like trying to get position of the other. Like, and if I see, for example, a devotee, and I'm very very attracted by his qualities. Maybe I would wish to get his position, like be like him. So what is exactly the difference between being envious and trying to become like someone else?
We can take it on a language level. If you say, I would like, I would like to be like him, that's an aspiration to grow into something someone else is, and the other person can stay too. Envy would mean, I would like to have it instead of him. That he doesn't have it anymore, but I have it instead. He or she is stripped of it, and I get it instead. Because I don't grant the other person. It's also in psychology we look at, I hope I don't tap into a Fettnapf, how you say in English, I don't know. But usually children or like babies are considered very innocent and sweet. But actually they're full of envy. They cannot tolerate anyone getting what they think is mine. Because what they do immediately, they cry and they fight and they are so, even like, some of you grew up siblings, sisters, brothers, and so that you know, there's strong rivalry. And it's not that you, oh my dear brother, please take, yes it's you. No, it's mine, no? And then there's a big struggle for the attention, for the things and everything. And this feeling of lacking or like claiming it should be all mine is really strongly there in the conditioned soul. And even if you appear innocent, like it's a strong mentality. And one person, some Aviad Kleinberg, he wrote a book about the 7 sins. Because also in Christianity we have this concept that there are 7 main sins, or like and envy is one of them. Sin is that what keeps you away from God. You know? And he makes also a point that actually envy and jealousy, in Hebrew there's the word envy, and there's just one word for envy, which includes both jealousy and also envy. And this thing is quina, if I pronounce it correctly. It's a Hebrew word for envy. And interestingly, even the God of the Old Testament declares it its name. He says, Quina has spoken, I am God, I'm an envious God, I'm a jealous God. And then comes the famous statement where he said, break down their idols, destroy their this and that, because he's envious. He's a jealous God, he says. He doesn't grant anyone next to him any kind of glory or position. So that's the mentality of enviousness, and serving Krishna means the complete opposite. And we can be mixed with envy while we serve. Of course, we have this quality, we have these anarthas. And it's also described that there's some, in the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, like where it's described that many people got delivered by this transcendental knowledge over a long time. I think one of the most purpose Prabhupada mentions, there are many devotees who like appeared as devotees, but actually deep inside they do not believe in the Supreme Personality of God, Krishna, although they follow the path. Or they have tendency to become Krishna themselves. So even in a devotional path, you can still maintain envy, but it doesn't mean you use it in Krishna service. No, it accompanies you still as a weed in your garden and might put you put you astray. So one has to be very careful to acknowledge envy one has and trying to rectify it. And one of the tools one must do is to first be honest and acknowledge these things. And then also look what is the need behind it. Because behind everything, of course, there's a need, and see how can it be fulfilled and counteract it. It said if you're really envious of someone, the counteract could be that you consciously try to serve the person without attachment to something, or like to acknowledge good qualities in a person, but just practice to grant another person his or her good qualities, glories, advantages, whatever.
So there's one question which just came to my mind. So if we can be envious, Krishna is never envious, where does envy come from? I mean, it is said that the soul, the jiva, has exactly the same qualities as Krishna, but in other quantity. So how it is happen? How it could happen that we are somehow envious, but Krishna is never?
Because there's a difference. It's a difference of quantity and quality. Krishna is the source of everything that exists. For him there is no lack, there's nothing to gain from any source outside of him, because he's the source of everything. So he could, in best case, he could be envious of his own self. But he doesn't do he's he's not. He has all the everything that one could be envious of comes from him, is his. So there he has no reason to envy anyone. So he's fully Atmaram, complete within himself. So the living entity has a smaller position, is limited, and the difference, is visible through the jiva. And so therefore, like since the Krishna is Vibhu and the living entity is Anu, Krishna is huge and unlimited, and the living entity is small. It has partially the tendency to enjoy, be also Ishvara, and to control. It's also sometimes mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita, the term Ishvara is applied also to the living entity because it is, or Purusha, is the enjoyer or acts as enjoyer in the body. So it can also expand this desire to, in a way, me instead of Krishna. So then the envy is there, but actually my understanding, so I'm not fully aware if it's really like that, but my understanding, the envy as we know it develops really in the material world. In the spiritual world there's not really envy. There's tendency to be separate from Krishna, to have the desire to be your own Krishna. And then in the material world really this envy becomes then it turns, like, how to say it, like the love turns into lust, everything turns, gets how to say, perverted. Yeah, and so my concept so far is, as I say, I'm not saying it is exact Shastra, but my understanding is that there's some state, so to say, of separation that one can have from Krishna and being I instead of Krishna, and then it transforms into this intense envy that we can have in the material world.
But we often hear that Radharani or even some gopis are envy of the other gopis because they are together with Krishna. That means, and Radharani is not different from Krishna. That means envy is also there.
And this is understood also in terms of language and semantics. It's also said that the gopis are lusty, and of course we would not assume that they are lusty as like in the material world people are lusty. These words are used to make them tangible to us in their way of being, because we have no other approach than our language to understand it, and language is flawed. And words have to be used, although they might not be accurately actually pointing to what is intended to be said. So when we hear like the gopis are lusty or Radharani is envious, then this is the unfortunate necessity of using some language to give us some clue what is meant, So, but it's not to be understood that they are truly envious as conditions also envious, or lusty as
spiritual envious. Yeah.
Well, yeah,
you said that is prema or lust, love and lust, and the same word for it is also different.
There's some competition, yes, they have, but so that's maybe good. One must be careful with the terms. And I get what you're saying, because I myself pointed to this idea. At the same time, it's rather, we would have to find a word for that, I guess. Perhaps there's a Sanskrit word, most likely, but I'm not a Sanskrit scholar. All right. You put the microphone to. maybe just one more addition, please keep your question, to the non-enviousness, because also what we said to Narayana Rishi, what did he do when even he was attacked by Indra in the form of Cupid and Spring? How did he react? Instead of being envious and punishing them and saying, I'm queen now, and you will be destroyed because I'm jealous. He says, I smile, please take gifts from me. And he even gave them something even most valuable, what they didn't have. It means Urashi, this most divine Apsara. So he responded even with a gift to the envious attack of the demigods. It's also non-envious. If you're not envious, you can do that, it's okay.
Yeah, thank you so much. I was just downstairs, and as you were telling about the Jarasandha, because I also was under impression that Jarasandha actually was elected 18 times, and then you were starting to speak that he was killed by ripping him apart, and then it was who was then killed in a cave.
Yeah.
So I looked it up,
Cool.
and here it is. After the death of Kamsa, when Mathura was encircled by the soldiers of Kalyavana, Jarasandha and Salva, so there were three together.
Okay.
The Lord seemingly fled from the city, and thus he is known as Ranchor, or one who fled from fighting. Actually, the fact was that the Lord wanted to kill them through the agency of his own men, devotees like Muchukunda and Bhima. Kalyavana and the king of Madhava were killed by Muchukunda.
Okay.
So I guess Kalyavana was running behind him and was killed, and Jarasandha did collect the army for
right.
18 times.
I know the puzzle pieces come together. Thank you. Yes, they're all in it together. Alright. Shri Krishna Bhagavan ki jai. Grant Shri Bhagavatam ki jai. Shri Prabhupada ki jai.
Keshava ki jai.